We are at exact time to get started. So let's get going. Super nice to see so many people here. Thank you for connecting in the chat and in the Mentimeter. I can see that we have quite a variety of roles here, but the most dominant being educators, lecturers, and coaches, and also some associate professors in here as well. So super lovely. Let's get to it. So super welcome to today's session. We're going to be talking about formative assessment today. And if you haven't already, in the previous slide, please feel free to pick up your phone and scan the QR code in the left corner here. And in that way, you will be able to vote on any questions I have today, ask questions or anything like that. You can also, if you want to, on any device that has a web browser, go to menti.com and put in the code that you see here on the top of the screen. And it's going to be on every slide today. So feel free, if for some reason you get turn off your browser or something like that, you always have the code there on top. And you can ask questions today at any time through pressing the open Q&A button that you have once you have signed in through either the code or the QR code here on the left side of the screen. You can also see each other's questions there. So feel free to upvote the questions that you found the most interesting or relevant for you. And the most upvoted questions will pop up first for whoever is presenting, whether it's me or our guest speaker, Carla, today. So please do feel free to have a look there continuously and put in any questions you have. I know we also have the chat in the live storm, but please try as much as possible to navigate your questions to the Mentimeter so you get to try it out and also to see what it looks like and to upvote each other's questions. And I have my lovely colleague, Ostra, moderating the Q&A today, mainly to make sure that we don't have too many duplicate questions in case that comes in. So don't be panicked if you don't see your question coming in straight away. Ostra will make sure to get them through as soon as possible. And of course, today as well, here with us is Carla, who I'm going to be introducing in just a second a bit more, but she is going also to be talking a bit about how she is using Mentimeter for formative assessment today. Lovely. I think that kind of starts it off and kicks it off. I would love to have a little bit of a check-in about how comfortable you are with using Mentimeter for formative assessment, ranging from not comfortable at all to fully at ease. Let's see, and I'm gonna just add the QR code again here to the left side if someone really needs it urgently, and I'll remove it before we get going to the next slide. Let's see how many we are here today. It looks like, well, I can't even see where we have. Oh, there we go. 180 people almost. So I'm going to be waiting to get, well, to 100. Yes, I already am at 100. Nice. So it looks like we have, well, a very mixed group today. Most of you are the average ending up to being 3. So definitely somewhere in the middle, with some of you being very comfortable, but I'd say most of you being somewhat comfortable or somewhat not comfortable at all, actually, which is great. Hopefully you'll feel a bit more confident after the session today. Thank you so much for sharing. So the agenda for today is that we will start off with the what and the why of formative assessment. So maybe a bit of a recap or a repetition for some of you, but of course to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing and we clarify any potential misconception. And then I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker, Carla El-Khoury from University of Oslo, who will talk about how she has used it in her language classes. So I'll get a bit more to that in a second. After that, I will go into some more inspiration and examples in Mentimeter. So I'll share some things that I see when I work with universities. Oops. And the Q&A is open all through the session, as mentioned earlier. So just a short introduction of myself as well. I guess many of you may have seen me before, but if you haven't, my name is Julia, and I work with, well, just actually with universities at Mentimeter. So I work with mostly our larger universities. So if you get an institution-wide license, you'll probably get to work with me and do advisory with me in general on how to use Mentimeter. But to really kick off, very short on what is formative assessment. And when I put this into ChatGPT, it put this output to me: a low stakes way to monitor student learning, providing ongoing feedback to improve understanding and guide teaching. And I also did, of course, some research on Google, and I know from experience working with a lot of universities what formative assessment usually is and what you usually talk about. So of course, this is not an exhaustive definition of formative assessment, but I did think that it kind of captured the main parts of it, with the low stakes being the fact that it's not really a formal way of assessment, like an exam or something like that, but a way to kind of understand how the students are doing before you actually assess them more formally, and helping you to kind of provide the ongoing feedback to make sure that the students understand, and also so that they themselves can know what should they be maybe focusing a bit more themselves in their own learning. And why formative assessment? Of course, there's a plethora of different reasons, but a few important ones that I thought to highlight today before we really get into it is, first and foremost, that it supports continuous feedback. So it really identifies students' understanding and areas of difficulty, which in turn enables immediate feedback and targeted support. Furthermore, it personalized the learning experience. So it really allows educators to adjust to better meet the needs of its students or group. And we'll, of course, get into how you can do that in Mentimeter specifically. But it really allows for the teacher to kind of lean into the students and their needs and what they may need to be successful in the course or a class in general. And it also encouraged some self-reflection, because of course it's not only the teacher that needs to adjust to the students, it's also the students that need to adjust to the teacher or to the material that is presented towards them. The teacher can present a lot of things, but in the end it is the students themselves that need to do the learning. So students can indeed identify gaps in their own knowledge and become more active and more self-directed learners if they know some of the gaps that there may be in their own learning, and also by seeing how others in their own course or class are doing comparatively to them. That can be a good reminder of either I'm doing very well here, I can continue in the way that I am, or maybe I should do some more work or catch up with the rest of the class. So that's also something very important with the formative assessment perspective. And then finally, hopefully it boosts motivation and confidence. So it does provide students with a sense of progress and accomplishment before the formal exams, which can hopefully reduce anxiety and increase motivation, so that they do feel more prepared when the more formal grading examinations kind of turn up, so to say. But I will leave it over now to Carla, who is an Arabic instructor at University of Oslo and a very good Mentimeter super user. So she will be talking about formative assessment from a second language acquisition context, because she is a Arabic instructor. And I will leave it over to her to continue from here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Julia, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be with you today and to share my experience using Mentimeter to design formative assessments. As Julia mentioned, I teach the Arabic language. So today, maybe you're going to be hearing, I know, and I read a lot of you comes from different backgrounds, but today I'm going to be focusing more, let's say, in the language context. But hopefully, a lot of you will get some inspiration along the way. So, imagine learning a language and where you get support or feedback and you have no motivation to continue. And let's think together if it was the opposite way, where you have somebody who's like a coach, is guiding you, is giving you the opportunity to reflect on your mistakes, on your progress. How would you feel about that? You will have more confidence and you will learn faster the language. And this is why we consider formative assessments to be very powerful in languages, and I bet in other as well fields. So today, I'm going to give you, before starting going into more details about the formative assessment that I designed through Mentimeter, I will give you a little bit big picture about the language that I teach, the context a little bit. So when designing our language courses at the University of Oslo, we designed them according to what we call the background design model. That means, first of all, we have a vision. We know our students at the end of the semester which learning objectives they will be reaching. And after that, after designing the main vision, we start thinking about what kind of assessment, how my students will show me that they are learning, what are the summative and formative assessment, and at the end, we start planning the experiences and the activities and the lessons. So today I'll be focusing mainly on the formative assessment. And I want you to keep in mind as well, when I go through my experience, is that we do have something called, we use the method of a flipped classroom. That means my students get engaged for the first time with the new concept, grammatical concept, and vocabulary at home. And then the time in the class is just to activate those knowledge. And this is very important because you're going to see through the slide that I'm going to go through that I use a lot Mentimeter to help me know what is my starting point in the seminar. So why using Mentimeter? Definitely Mentimeter is very easy to use. As an instructor, that I have a lot of students in my classroom and I have very limited time, and it's something very easy to use. That's the top one on my list. Second of all, I have noticed that through Mentimeter, my students, even the shy one, are very engaged. Mentimeter is allowing me to see the written production of my students, and allow me to give what we call real-time feedback on their production. I notice it reduces the frustration, especially in the process of learning a new language, because when you learn a new language, you're kind of very vulnerable. You don't want to make a mistake, and everybody is just, you're under the spot and everybody's looking at you. And as well, it fosters a community of knowledge sharing through group reflection. And we are going, and I'm going to explain and expand more on this point later on. So first of all, and first form of formative assessment is the diagnostic quizzes. Mentimeter allow me to do quizzes. They are in a very informal way. I introduce them basically in different stages during the seminar. But I will start saying these quizzes, they allow me to assess the students' understanding of language concepts. Because as I mentioned before, my students engage in the new material at home, and I need to know what are the gaps in their understanding as a starting point. As well, it helped me tailor future seminars. For example, here you can see, for example, I have asked my student at the start of the seminar to choose the translation in Arabic, how we can say my big car. Definitely, it might seem a very simple question, but honestly, to be able to choose the right and the correct answer, a lot of grammatical concept and vocabulary the students need to think about. So from that question, I realized that most of the students did not get the concept of nominal sentence, which is, for me as a teacher, it was very important because I will prioritize certain activities over other. Then this was for more beginner students where they were learning the Arabic letters, and I was just pronouncing a word out loud, and they needed to choose what word they are hearing. So these kind of quizzes, diagnostic quizzes, will help me to see what the students were able to understand, to assimilate at home, and what are the things as an instructor I need to do with them in the classroom. The next type of interactive or the formative assessment is interactive activities. And this one I can say it is my favorite because it gives me insight into the student thinking process. I'm going to explain how. So usually when the students have a new vocabulary or new grammatical concept in the classroom, I ask them to write sentences using those vocabulary. After they're done and they submitted their answer, and here I want to point that the students, since the answers are anonymous, they feel they can challenge themselves and write longer and in new contexts. So after they did this, as a classroom together, we reflect on certain sentences. So I choose random sentences and we try together to build how we think while writing a sentence in Arabic. In that way, all the classroom are seeing definitely the correction. We're getting the correction together. But the most important thing is that I'm teaching them how to approach and think in a new language. I'm preparing them to be independent learners in the future anyway. Here is for the more advanced level. For those students are required to write a story using the vocabulary and grammar. And this exercise as well, they could complete it individually or in pairs. But after they are done and submitted their answer on Mentimeter, I ask them to do what we call peer assessment. So each student will choose a random submission and they will give feedback on it. They will give feedback even without knowing the person. It's going to be always in the classroom together because we are creating what we call a community of knowledge and of knowledge sharing. The next one, and Mentimeter allow me to use funny pictures, a lot of pictures, and here it is a starting point for my students just to describe the picture. Another skill that helps me to push my students to write more in the Arabic language. Now, not only in the classroom I use Mentimeter, as well I use it in asynchronous activities. I would ask my students to complete certain written tasks at home by scanning the Mentimeter code that I include in their daily schedule, the schedule where I share with them what they need to prepare for the next seminar. Why do I do that? It is very beneficial for me as a teacher because it allows me to know the gaps of understanding, to plan my seminar in a way where I can maximize the learning of my students because I know beforehand what they are lacking simply. Now, as well, I use Mentimeter as a starting point for all the activities. In this slide, I'm showing you, I have started and put a sentence on Mentimeter. Students that tried in pairs just to reflect and analyze the structure of the sentence. And after doing that, they had to use this sentence in a conversation. So in the classroom, we just started with Mentimeter, but after that, we continued to oral production. Now, another way of formative assessment that is considered very important is to make our students feel as they are active in the learning process. That means is allowing them and creating opportunities for them for self-assessment. Self-assessment is important because they reflect on their own learning and they take responsibility. I think Julia mentioned this before, but as a language student, what I can do, I can be the coach, but I cannot be the one who is training or who is actively using the language. So the self-assessment will allow the student to see if they reach the desired learning outcomes, and it allows them to reflect what are the things that they need to work on. And it allows me as well as a teacher to plan the rest of the semester. Because sometimes as teachers, we all have some expectation that are not realistic, or we hope sometimes that our students have reached some goals, but in reality they didn't. So these self-assessment are a tool for me as well to kind of adjust my expectation and plan effectively the rest of my semester. As well, I Mentimeter through the scale allow me and allow the students to do a self-evaluation, not only on the learning outcome, but on their participation in the seminar. Were they active? How they contributed? Are they doing the work that they need to do? I thought to make it more kind of realistic and not only sharing the experience from a teacher perspective, what about I share with you some of the students' feedback? When I asked the student to rank what do they consider the main reasons that I'm using Mentimeter in the classroom, the top reasons they choose, it was to have inputs as an instructor, to have input about previous knowledge of the students upon which I plan my next seminars. Because the students notice after I do the diagnostic quizzes, the evaluation, they know how I adjust the seminars that I organize. And after that, they have voted that Mentimeter create an inclusive environment, and it helped them to evaluate their understanding and help them to get some insight in their learning process. And I have as well asked them, what did you like best about Mentimeter? Some students are very happy to say that it was an exercise. They like the exercises that we do with Mentimeter in classroom, where I ask them to write something. Then as a group, we reflect on it and when we reflect on a written production, nobody is going to feel, ashamed or embarrassed of doing mistakes, or they used the word in the wrong context, because we are learning as a community, and we are taking out from learning this stressful and this frustration of just being under the spot. So this is what they mentioned several times to me, and a lot of students mentioned as well that they like completing some Mentimeter activity or formative assessment in pair or groups in Mentimeter, and it is anonymous and it's very easy to use, very easy to access. And they loved the quizzes. They loved the element of competition and formative assessment, because yes, you are learning, but you are learning kind of in a fun way. Yes, I think that was in a quick way my experience using Mentimeter. I think I have been using it for 3 years so far, and I can say that I cannot imagine a seminar without using it in the warm up or at the end in the closure as well. So yeah, I am ready to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Carla. So I do think we have quite a few lined up, starting off on a positive note. Do you see Mentimeter fatigue among your students, particularly if several instructors use it on different parts of the same course? Very valid question, to be fair.
To be honest, at least I can talk from my personal experience. I didn't see that other instructor that use Mentimeter the way I use it. Definitely some of them, they use it, but in a different way. At least I never heard from a student when I asked them to log or to put the code or to go and grab their mobile phone and use Mentimeter. I never get any reaction that shows that they are kind of fed up, let's say it in that way, of using Mentimeter. It was the opposite always, because I think it always depends how do you use it. And it's very important as well element is that you explain for the student why you're using it. I have noticed as well with my student that when they know the benefit of any e-learning or platform we are using, they approach it in a different way. And that's a key element, I feel.
Thank you. And I think it's tying into, if you have a purpose with something, then usually get a good response. But I think it doesn't really matter whichever tool you use. If you don't have a purpose with it, it may be a little bit too much at times. Thank you so much for that, Carla. Following on, could you elaborate on how you give homework in Mentimeter? I do not know how to do this.
So usually what I do is I create my presentation in Mentimeter, putting the questions that I want the students to answer. It could be a written task. It could be a task related to another one in the textbook you are using. What I do after I create, I of course make it on not the audience space, but audience space, not the speaker pace. So as if you're conducting a survey, for example. So what I do is I scan or I take a snip of the QR code, and I include it in the schedule where I share with the students what is the homework to be completed before every seminar. So basically the students, they scan the QR code in their weekly schedule, and they are able to access the presentation where they're going to put their answers, they're going to complete the written tasks.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Menti is anonymous, right? How teacher knows which student is performing how? I don't know if that's directly to you, Carla, but I think I can also answer that one in general. I think many of the benefits that at least I see, and I think Carla has presented as well, is the fact that it is synonymous. So it's not really about zooming into a specific student and knowing how they are performing. And I think that much of the power comes from the fact that they know that they're not going to get assessed on it, that they actually get to share on their motivation, where they feel like they are in their studies without fear of any implications for doing so. So I think definitely there's certain aspects that are good in knowing, but from the Mentimeter perspective, I do think there's a lot of value in actually not knowing which student is doing what. And I think that's what the students feel as well. Not sure if you want to add something to that, Carla.
Yeah, I think I had the same idea in mind, honestly, especially in when you want to focus on more the learning of how to learn something more about who is learning it, then yeah, Mentimeter is the best choice, honestly.
Lovely. There's a lot of questions coming in. We'll see if we have the time. So everyone, please go in and upvote so you get the question that you find is the most relevant for you, because I'm not sure we won't have the time to go through all of them. But moving on, when your students take the QR code for homework, do you see the results as they do their homework/prep?
Yes, so I don't know if I understood the question correctly. Do you see the result as they do their homework? Definitely I don't know who did the homework or which one did it, but those homework are not graded. We call them like informal way of assessment. So the main purpose is just practicing a concept, practicing a structure. But I can know from the number of submissions how many students kind of completed the homework. But in those homework, it doesn't matter for me who did it or who did not do it. It might be sometimes an extra practice, extra activity, extra task. I hope I answered this question.
I think so. And I think also she always, when Carla goes into Mentimeter, she's going to continuously see if anyone has submitted something into Mentimeter. So you can always kind of go in and see, has someone submitted something new, even though you cannot see exactly which students has put in what. Just a little extra note on that, but so much for that. All right, let's take a few more questions before we move on. How do you encourage everyone to participate? For example, if the class is 20 students and repeatedly only 11 are answering, how can you assess the rest and encourage participation?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
I do have a rule in the classroom, which is always I activate the reaction in Mentimeter. So, and I know the number of participants. So there's a golden rule in my classroom. I will never start an activity before I see the number of participants as the same number of students and I get a like from them. So it's just like being, and a student, if he did not participate, you will feel very embarrassed because everybody is just waiting for that student who did not join Menti. So it is very important from the start of your activity to make sure everybody is in. Because in the middle of the activity, I mean, it's hard to tell them, okay, please, who did not scan. From the start, everybody's on board, then we can start our activity.
Great. And now you can always see at the bottom right corner, it's not in this one specifically, but I'll show you later when I move forward. You can actually see a little avatar, and there you can see how many have put in answers. So even if you have 20 answers on a question, you can actually see how many students have put it in. So it could be 30 answers, but only you can see that only 15 individuals have put that in. So then you actually know, have all individuals in this class put in an answer, for example. So that's really useful. All right. And if anyone wants to upvote, just press the open Q&A, and then you can give a little thumbs up to the question you find the most interesting. And I think we'll take 2 more questions. So go in there. I'll give you maybe 20 seconds to go in and look into the questions and upvote, so we make sure that the one that you are most interested in gets answered by Carla before we move on. So let me see if I can actually activate. I'll start a timer for 30 seconds so you can go in and upvote. And then let's go. All right, time is running out. Was a bit daunting with something that is kind of like oh, now I'm removing and adding things. Lovely. Now you have the chance to up a vote. Let's go to the next question. Do you run an induction of how to use Menti? Maybe it's instruction maybe on how to use Menti, or provide any guidance prior students using Menti. Right, I guess the question is, do you run any introduction on how to use Menti or provide any guidance to prior students, I guess, using Menti?
Yeah, of course, as you know, Menti is very easy to use. I don't do this extensive introduction, but I can tell you at the start of the semester, when we are just gathering the expectation of the students, and I'm sharing as well my expectation, one of the expectation that I highlight is the active participation in the classroom, which I mentioned Mentimeter. And when I mention Mentimeter, what I do definitely, I give an idea what is Mentimeter, and it's included in the e-learning tools, in their canvas, in the platform that we use at the university, where they can go and read about Mentimeter more. But as well, I tell them how we're going to use it, that you need to have your mobile phone or your laptop with you. That's something to share with the students. And the second thing is I share what is the benefit, why we are using Mentimeter in our classroom. So yeah, I do, but a very short introduction and more on technicalities.
Lovely. All right. Sometimes the students misuse Mentimeter's response process. How do I prevent this? Well, yeah, maybe you have some examples, Carla. Otherwise, I can also fill in here.
Yeah, this is what I mentioned before. When students, they know why we are using this Mentimeter, why we are using this platform, it's always changed the way they approach it. But as well, I do remember there's a way that you can correct me. That never happened with me that students just answer something wrong. But I do remember there's a way that I can take out an answer or just delete a submission.
Yes, that is correct. So you can close the voting, basically pressing, let me see, I'm not sure if you can do that here. Anyhow, you can press C on your keyboard as in close. And if you have any open-ended question types that basically allows for any kind of misuse, then as soon as you press C for close, then you'll get a little a trash can next to all of the answers. So if you then press that, then it's going to get removed. So you can very easily remove something that comes in at the moment. And we do also have a profanity filter that can also take some of them. So I would assume that, or I would recommend doing that basically. All right, so I'll sneak in one more question. Is that okay, Carla?
Yes, of course.
Lovely, because I feel there's a lot of really good ones here. Is there any other way to track student participation so that you can provide a participation grade? I don't necessarily want to track achievement, but I want to know which students are engaged. I think I can probably answer this one actually. There are some workarounds to the anonymity of Mentimeter, but for now I'd say most of them is the anonymity is kind of part of the beauty of Mentimeter. So for now we don't have a formal way of doing that. We may have something up our sleeves in the future as an added feature. Don't quote me on that. But for now it's basically anonymous at all times. Not sure if you've had any way of working with this, Carla, specifically, or no.
Honestly, no, but no, honestly, no, because I did not, but nice way I want to share with the audience to use Mentimeter is in groups. Sometimes I ask the three to sit together and just have one submission. But yeah, to have participation of each student, no, unfortunately, I didn't.
Thank you so much for that. All right. Thank you so much for all of the questions. Unfortunately, we don't have time to answer all of them today, but thank you so much for upvoting as well. So we keep it relevant for most of you. So I'm going to mark this one as answered. And I'll see if there's any questions going forward that can be answered by me, or maybe if Carla has some time also at the end. I would love, first off, for you to share your experiences as well. If you have any effective examples of checking students' understanding during lessons, either with Mentimeter or without, just kind of sharing some knowledge with each other here in the group. Feel free to do that here. And I'm also going to add the QR code if anyone wants to sign in again or maybe join late. You can just scan the QR code here to the bottom left side. And thank you so much, Carla, for your examples and for your great answers to all the questions. All right, quizzes at the end of a topic. Lovely. I've used quiz, think, pair, share. I have heard this one quite a few times, actually, how to kind of reflect on something or think in your own, then go into pair, share together, and then potentially resubmit an answer into Mentimeter sometimes as well. Let's see, I use them for check-ins at the beginning of my organic chemistry lecture, quiz competitions. They love the competition and picking silly names for their avatars. Lovely. I'm going to remove the QR code now so we can see the answers as well. And we're getting quite a lot of answers in, so I'm probably going to use some of our AI features to group these together so I can get a bit better overview. Because as soon as you have 10 or more answers to your question, you will get this little button here popping up that you can press space to group responses if you have AI features enabled. So I'm going to do that now, actually, and have AI starting to group because it's a bit hard for me to get an overview from all of these lovely answers here. So let's get going and see whatever groupings we get. All right, so some effective examples that you have are using quizzes, some multiple choice questions. If I press one of these here, so I can actually go in and see specific examples. So students type names before answering, getting what they think they know before we start a topic, open answer question or word cloud. Lovely. And you can actually move some of them around if for some reason this seemed to, for example, be maybe more suitable for a word cloud. If that's a group, you can add new groups here as well, for example. But I've seen this question or like this grouping being used in a quite nice way to start discussions in class as well. So here, for example, we have group discussions seem to be popular, knowledge assessment, start with the question, asking them to assess it, some interactive activities, formative assessment. Yes, let's see what that is. Formative survey, pre and post. Oh, in the field of nursing, show some videos with mistakes and students have to find out what was wrong and tell how it should be correct. Nice. You will get this presentation after the session today, so feel free to go in and read everyone's examples here. We had some new responses coming in also after I categorize it, so you can look around and see whatever you are the more interested in and something you may want to deep dive and get some inspiration from. So you can use this as a source of information and inspiration, hopefully. Great, thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to move into some other inspiration and examples in Mentimeter, showcase some different features and how it can look on the Mentimeter end, doing formative assessments with Mentimeter. And some examples I've also seen being used across different universities. So first off, quite similar to some of the slides that Carla has showed you, but very straightforward ranking question, asking the students to rate their knowledge in different areas. Here I've just put together some knowledge areas that is hopefully relevant for anyone that is a teacher or an educator in universities. And of course, if I would be teaching ongoing to the same group around these topics, it could be interesting for me to have a look at, for example, the ones that are at the bottom, because if those are important parts of whatever course I'm hosting, it is, or it may at least be some things that I could put some more focus on, because if the students are more comfortable in a certain area, maybe I can spend a little bit less time there. And for now, for example, that could be student guidance and mentorship. Potentially that could be an area to dive a bit more into and just dig more around. So this is a very easy way to ask the students to assess their own knowledge and getting a very quick overview on what that looks like in the group as a whole. So again, the ranking question, one of our interactive slide types. And definitely one of my favorite feature, if you've been on my webinars or trainings before, you've probably seen this. But the fact that you can actually segment or see correlations between our multiple choice question type. So, for example, asking students how well do they feel that they understand any material that has been covered so far. So if they fully understand, if they partially understand but are struggling with some parts, or if they really do not understand at all. Having those few examples and gathering all of that insight. And once you're happy, actually, I'll show you, I promise I'll show you. Here at the bottom right corner, I can see how many students have, or how many of you have submitted answers. And these would be the number of individuals that have submitted. So 59 individuals out of you have submitted your answer here. And a little bit of a nice trick that you can do, or a very easy way to avoid bias in class, is to move your mouse in the bottom of the screen. And here you have a navigation bar. And in the eye here, you can actually hide responses. You can also press H on your keyboard for hide, of course. And basically now I can see how many answers I get in continuously. So I have 72 answers, now 73 answers coming in, but I'm not showing the results to you as my students before I'm happy with the number of submittals, basically. Submittals, maybe that's not English, but you get my point. So to Carla's point earlier, making sure that everyone gets the chance to voice their opinion without seeing what everyone else is thinking can be very, very valuable. So I highly recommend to use this feature and avoiding bias in the classroom to make sure that, you know, not everyone necessarily get affected with each other or the loudest voice in the room. Because if you do see a lot of things, even in Mentimeter, popping up and many thinking the same thing, maybe you feel also a bit inclined to say the same. This is a closed-ended question type, the multiple choice, but more for open-ended question type. I do really recommend that. But of course, you may not also want to bias students with this response here as well. So it looks like most of you have got it. Some of you partially understand, but are struggling with some parts, and 4 of you do not understand well at all. Hopefully, I'll be able to clarify some things further down. What you can do then is to, for example, ask the students what would help them feel more prepared for any upcoming assessments, but to make sure to lean in and understand what are the missing parts for them to feel more prepared once the more formal examinations come in. And here, for example, I've asked about more practice questions, sample problems, if there's any additional clarifications they need, more times for discussion, and so forth and so forth. And the beauty with this question is that I can segment it with the previous one and find correlations, basically. So if I move my mouse to the left side of the screen, I get another navigation bar popping up here. And this you can do either in class with the students, again, for them to see what are the needs of the others in class. There can be a big value in that for them to understand, okay, I'm not alone in needing more resources and not following the class and so forth. But if you want to, you can also do this afterwards in your own peace and quiet. You can start to crunch the data in Mentimeter because, as some of you may know, everything does get saved in there. So here I have a button on the left side that says show segmentation. And here I can segment this one with the previous one. How well do you feel you understand the material covered so far? And now I have a little bit of a deeper, hopefully, understanding of how it differs between the different groups of students. So it's still completely anonymous, but I do get a deeper understanding of how the groups differ from each other. So, for example, the ones that do not understand well at all, they have actually not answered yet on this question, so we'll see what they need. But for the pink ones, partially understand but struggling with some part, I can see that the major or the main part of those students want more practice questions or sample problems, for example. And quite a lot of them, very closely followed, seem to want additional clarification on key concepts as well. So that could help me to understand a bit more how I can potentially allow for more of those things for those students to catch up. Or it could also be a way for them to understand, maybe I need to do some more in my own learning to get to catch up with this as well. So it's a really nice way, again, to understand a bit more about your audience and students without being too, or still being anonymous and not intrusive, so to say. Let me see, I have some questions. Let's see, I think this is for Carla. Can you please tell us what kind of slide you use with your examples?
So yeah, for example, for the diagnostic quizzes, I use the quiz function, which is the multiple choice. For the other example, when it comes to reviewing some vocabulary and grammatical structure, I have used open-ended questions. I have used as well open-ended questions, sometimes an added image in the background. For self-assessment, I have used mainly the scale or scaling. And yes, I think that's mainly the examples I showed today.
Lovely, thank you. There may be some more questions here lined up for you. How often do you implement formative quizzes? Just thinking from a point of overwhelming them or adding too much activities within a course.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, integrating Mentimeter in my seminar, it's not the same way every time. For example, sometimes I do introduce it in the warm-up part, sometimes at the end in the wind down, sometimes in certain activities. I cannot say, I can say almost every seminars, but sometimes we do have, for example, a reading activity where only we're focusing on reading letters from a textbook. So it depends, but since every time using the activity had different purpose, it can help a little bit not to get this feeling of being overwhelmed or bored of a Mentimeter.
Thank you. All right. Are your sessions in person or online?
Well, that's a good question. They are in person, but when I started using Mentimeter, it was during the COVID period. Because we were searching for platforms that can interact and help with the interaction with the students. So I can say I have used it for a very short period of time online, but mainly, yes, my seminars are in person.
Thank you. Do you find the quiz question types limited? In other words, fill in gaps or multiple correct answers types would be useful rather than just simple multiple choice and type answers.
Definitely. I mean, we would benefit if we would have more types of questions under the quiz category. But I think I play almost on the question I ask, the way I ask them, more than the type of the question I use here. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Maybe if we can have in the future more types, the
We're
more the
listening.
merrier.
Yes, we're here. We're listening to you. I have actually heard this one a few times before, so hopefully sometime in the future, I have forwarded that to the team previously, actually. So hopefully sometime in the future we can have that. Do you use other tools alongside Menti?
Yes, I do use. I have another e-learning tool, Quizzes, which is we use it mainly to activate vocabulary related to the textbook the students are using. And we use as well the platform, which is the university platform. Yeah, these are mainly the tools I use.
All right. There's a lot for you here, Carla. They're very curious. How do you present the results of the assessment to your student? Does that happen through discussion and Mentimeter slides, or do you use something else as well?
Yeah, of course, it depends which assessment. If you're talking about the self-assessment, for example, I always download the result, honestly, and post them again on the Canvas, which is the university platform or our room, we call it. If we're talking about the quizzes, I love to do what we call real-time feedback, which is I stop after sometimes each question and we reflect why this is the correct answer, why this is the wrong answer. So basically it depends, but mainly I do most of them in classroom, but the self-assessment and surveys and evaluation, I download them and I post them for the students.
All right, thank you. Let's do one more question before we move forward as well. When using a Menti in a synchronous manner, do we think students are less distracted by other mobile device activities?
When we are using it in the classroom, they are distracted. I mean, because we do use it like, it's kind of like when I use it, it's a good question. I mean, they don't, because they are usually focusing on the activity we're conducting. But I did notice in maybe the advanced level, they tend to do that. So what I did is I added a timer for the activities. So if they want to be distracted, then losing part, or yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much, Carla. All right. Well, I would love to know how comfortable you are now with using Mentimeter for formative assessment. And I'm going to live as I learn, and I'm going to hide the responses so you don't get biased with each other. And let's see if we are higher now than before the session. That would be very exciting for sure. So I'm doing a little bit of a formative assessment on you. I'm assessing your knowledge based on this lecture here today. And let's see how many I have. Oh, I have a lot of answers coming in. 58. Let's wait until we are at least 100, I think, and then I'll showcase the answer. And remember, before we started, the average was at 3. So hopefully, actually 3.0, exactly 3. So let's see if we are a bit higher now. And if anyone is like, how do I join this? How do I vote? I'm confused. I have the QR code here to you at the left bottom side of the screen. Or you can just go to menti.com and put in this code in case someone joined late or need to sign in again for some reason. And I promise at 100, I would show the results. So please feel free to continue to submit the answer. All right, we're at 96. Soon there. 99. One more. Really? There we go. All right. Lovely. A whole point above. Very exciting to see. And I think a bit of definitely a more spread towards the right side of the screen. So super, super nice to see. Exciting indeed. And I think definitely Carla is mainly to thank for this. So thank you so much for participating here with all of your knowledge.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. All right. Again, that was it for today. We do have some feedback that we would love to get from you in terms of how you found this session here today, because we always want to improve and we want to also get some assessment so that we can become even better and relevant for you. So please feel free to share if the content was relevant for you, if you gained any insights, if any examples were beneficial for you, and if you would like to recommend this session. And perhaps we have some time for 1 or 2 more questions before we really wrap it up. We have some more minutes left, but I'll just leave this for just a few seconds for you to fill it in. And I've hidden the responses once again. I will show them at the end though. Actually, let's take some questions so those of you that have already submitted can listen in a bit. All right, other than formative assessments, what other ways can we use Mentimeter for language classes? Not sure if you want to take this one, Carla.
Yes, I think as well, maybe I have mentioned that you can use it for mid-course and end of course evaluation. It's great to compare throughout the years how teaching the same class, what is the feedback is changing, what are the things are working, not working. So that's a way to use Mentimeter. I use it a lot as well in presentations, and I encourage my students who are conducting presentation to engage their classmate, not just conduct boring presentation. It's like it's kind of being an inspiration in a way for them. So whenever they had a project that they need to have a presentation, I recommend them to use Mentimeter and include some interactive slides. This is what I can think about now.
All right. Thank you. I would assume the next one is for you maybe as well. Yes. Oh, maybe that's probably for me. How did you integrate this Q&A in this presentation? It's a feature that's part of Mentimeter. So either you can decide to have a specific Q&A slide and then allow everyone to submit their questions just on that slide specifically. Or as I have allowed the Q&A in every slide. You can definitely just Google Q&A Mentimeter, and I'm sure you'll find a guide there. Maybe Oster can also paste a guide on how to set that up. But it's really easy, and it's part of the Mentimeter platform, really. All right. Are there any limitations to the peer feedback activities you mentioned? For example, organizing a fair spread of who gives feedback to whom, / seeing the feedback in the same place as the comment posted. I guess this one is for you as well, Carla.
Yeah, so basically when I do the peer or giving a peer feed or assessing others' writing, the thing is they write the submission on their copybook and the feedback is done in their copybook, and then they share with the group what they have changed in structure and grammar. So always this activity is not done by two people because we don't want to identify who wrote that. So just they sit in a group and they share how that reflected on other writings.
All right. I promise. Now is the last question. And then we will formally wrap it up for today. Okay, are you going to cover how to use Mentimeter? Is that another session? Well, I hope I got some of those in. I guess this was a little bit earlier, and Carla presented some examples on how she's been using it. But I did show a few examples as well. But thank you for that. All right. Is it correct that the QR code changes each time you close the presentation? When I run it for the second or third time, I will have to provide a new QR code. Well, the QR code always stays the same, so it should always stay updated. That never one expires. So the one thing that does change is the code here on top, but if you do something in real time, you don't really have to worry about it. But the QR code should always be updated. Let's see if we have one more for Carla. For the story example, how did the students pick one to give feedback? Are they able to choose on the phone? I think that's for you then, Carla.
So when it comes to the story one, for example, I divide them into groups and I tell the students that they need to pick randomly two stories written. So sometimes same students, they pick sometimes the same story, but it doesn't matter because they're going to share how they reflected on the story. So basically they're adding to each other knowledge. So yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. I promise that will be the last question, and now it is. So I will show a little bit on the feedback here. Oh, thank you. That's really good insights. And feel free to continue. If you haven't already given feedback, feel free to do so. And that's all for today, everyone. And we are almost right on time. So thank you so much for participating, asking really great questions. Thank you so much to Carla for participating here once again. I'm sure it's been super inspiring. And I can tell from the questions coming in that the interactivity has been really high and the interest has been really, really high. So thank you so much, everyone. And that's it for today.